Yo, what's good guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple guitar and flute sample for Wheezy. As usual, I'm going to go in and break down one of my most recent samples and just show everything that I did, from the effects, the VSTs, the midis, and all that. And just, hopefully you learn something, hopefully you get inspired in some way. This sample is from one of my most recent sample packs, Slat Volume 2. It has a bunch of samples in this style, like Wheezy Pyrex kind of style, with a lot of dark guitar and flutes. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description for that. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. So let's get right into it. Yeah, as you can hear, the sample is relatively simple, nothing too crazy going on. It's got two different parts, the part at the end where the flute is half-timed. But yeah, really simple, only I think 4 sounds, but all the sounds have a purpose and they all just kind of create the vibe. If you look at the top where it shows all the frequencies when I play it, you'll notice that all the frequencies are filled out, and that's something that you kind of want to have as a goal when you're making a sample. If you want it to sound full and complete, you want the frequencies to be all spread out from the highs to the lows, and that's something that you want to try to do with pretty much as little sounds as possible. You don't want to make the sample too complex, so that was the idea with this sample. Just try to keep it simple, fill it out. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just break down everything that I did. Alright, so if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I did the flute first when I made the sample. I just had the flute melody like in my mind, so I laid that out and then built the guitar around it. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to show the guitar first. For the guitar, I showed this guitar in some of my other videos, but it's a contact bank, and then I used the Spanish preset. It just sounds kind of like, sounds pretty good for a VST, a guitar VST. Guitar VSTs usually don't sound that good, but it's pretty good just as it is. Then you can mess with the velocities, and then obviously I'll show what I did for the effects to make it sound even better. But this is the pattern I have here for the guitar. Really simple. I'll go ahead and play how it sounds without any effects. So, like I said, really simple. It's just basically a chord that's strummed out, F sharp, and then it goes up an octave, then down to C sharp, and then up to E, and then it repeats, and then it has this little end where it goes up to A and G sharp. And then literally, all I did here was I took the same exact pattern, shifted it down 5 semitones, and then I changed this this ending to kind of fit a little bit better, because it would have been out of key, so I just put it down. If I want to add some variation, you can always mess around with the root note and pitch it down 5 semitones. It's in a lot of popular songs. It's just a really good technique to kind of create a little bit of a progression and just keep that kind of like dark melodic vibe. So yeah, that's all I did for the MIDI. And then for the effects, I added some delay through this plugin, a little bit of reverb, Valhalla Vintage Verb, and then I added a compressor through this plugin again. And then with the EQ, I EQ'd out a lot of the highs and a lot of the lows. And then I added this EQ where I took out some really harsh frequencies. And then with all of the effects, it sounds like this. And then that's it, and then it just repeats. Yeah, like I said, really simple. The effects kind of just bring it alive, and also messing with the velocities makes it sound a little bit more like human. I also I always randomize, okay, I didn't, but usually I randomize the panning and the release as well. For this one I didn't, I think I just forgot, but usually I would recommend to do that just to make it sound a little bit more realistic as well. Yeah, that's it for the guitar. Alright, so next we'll go over the flute. For the flute, I use this Fairy Tale flute, contact bank, pretty good flute. I always turn down the reverb on it because I want to add my own reverb. That's pretty much the only tweaking I do to it. It's a pretty good stock flute. And this is the pattern that I came up with. Like I said, when I sat down to make this sample, I think I started with the flute because I had this melody in my head and I wanted to make something with it. Again, I messed with the velocities to make it sound a little bit more real. And this is a pattern that I had in my head that I laid down without any effects. So as you can tell, it's just very repetitive, but pretty catchy. How to explain this pattern, I don't really know. It just sounded good and it was stuck in my head. And I just kind of like whistled it out loud until I got it and was able to put it down on the MIDI. It's kind of bouncy with the first two notes. Just a really bouncy, like catchy flute melody. And then for the effects, I have halftime for the second part. Also have reverb, Valhalla vintage verb, and then I have this preset, the auto pan. It just kind of, I turn it down and then turn it down here. And then what it does is it just pans the sound back and forth from left to right. And it just kind of makes it more wide and makes it go back and forth. And then I added a bunch of EQ. EQ'd out some really harsh frequencies with the flute. Took out some of the highs, a lot of the lows. And then took out a bunch of harsh frequencies and a little bit more of the highs. And so with all of those effects, it sounds like this. And then on the halftime part, it sounds like this. And the reason why I added the halftime part is because I wanted some sort of variance in the sample, because like I said, it's very simple, but I still wanted it to be somewhat unique. There's a difference between being simple and being boring. I think it's a challenge to try to find the balance between being simple and not being boring, because you don't want to add too much, because anybody can do that. I mean, you could sit down and just add a bunch of stuff with no purpose and it doesn't necessarily sound good, but the real challenge is trying to add just enough to fill out the sample where everything has a purpose. So together with those two, it sounds like this. And then a little bit of variance with the halftime flute. And like I said, if you look up here at the frequencies, you can see that the frequencies are already filled out pretty well with just two sounds. So just the flute, just the guitar. It's a lot of sound already filled out with just those two sounds. So that's something you want to pay attention to when you're making samples, especially simple samples. You want them to be simple, but also to not be boring or lacking. So sound selection is big, making sure your sounds actually fill out the frequencies and everything has a purpose, and still adding little variances like the halftime flute, so it keeps things a little bit interesting. Alright, so the next thing that I did is a little cool trick that I've been doing with a lot of my sounds. I usually do it with pianos, but I wanted to try it out with this guitar and it ended up sounding really good. And it's just a trick to basically add more ambience to a sample, and it kind of has a unique sound. And with the guitar and flute, I wanted to add something in the background to make it a little bit more ambient while still keeping it simple. So basically all I did was I took the pattern from the guitar and just copied it over, also cloned the guitar instrument. So without effects, it's literally just the guitar, the same pattern. But what I did is I added a lot of delay. I added Valhalla Ubermod with this preset, and what that does is it just reverses the sound and just adds a lot of ambience and a little bit of warp. And then I added a lot of reverb to make it even more ambient, and then compressed it as well, and then EQ'd out a lot of the highs, a lot of the lows, and then some really harsh frequencies in the low mids. And then I added a lot of stereo. And so with all the effects, it sounds like this. And that's it, and then it just repeats. So it's literally the same pattern as the guitar, just with a bunch of effects, so it sounds completely different. And so with the guitar, it sounds like this. Yeah, as you can hear, it's just in the background. Sounds really unique and ambient. And then with the flute and the guitar, it sounds like this. And then the halftime. Yeah, that's pretty much all I did for the ambience to make the sample a little bit more ambient. And then last but not least, I added the bass that I pretty much always add, this one-shot bass. Make sure the envelope looks like this, like an 808. Make sure it's cutting. Really simple pattern here, just following the root note. Really, the only reason I add the bass is so that whoever's using the sample has the option to include that part in the beat, like as a bridge or an intro or something, with just the bass going. But also because it makes the sample sound a lot more full when the sample's done and you have the very low frequencies filled out as well. And then not only that, but it makes it really easy to lay down an 808 because you can just follow the root note of the bass. So it's kind of just a tool for whoever's using the sample if you want to, if you can't find the root note, or if you're struggling to figure out where to put the 808s, you can just listen to the bass that I put in there, and then you can put the 808s on top of it, and it just makes it a lot easier. So yeah, I don't even think I added any effects to the bass. This is what it sounds like. And then just repeats, like I said, really simple. So once I had everything laid out, all the instruments that I wanted, all the patterns, all that I did was I added the little variants at the end with the flute, halftime, and then I made sure to put the stems out for all the different instruments, and then I exported it out as an audio file and then brought it back in. And then sometimes, you know, I'll mess with the pitch, either pitch it up or down, but I ended up just leaving it where it was, and then I think I EQ'd it a little bit. I took out some more of the lows and then EQ'd out some of the low mids and then some harsh frequencies in the high mids. And then so yeah, that's pretty much it for the sample. I decided not to pitch it around. For the master, didn't add anything. If I needed to, I would add some gain to make it a little bit louder, but didn't really need to do that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the final sample. That's how I approach making simple samples for Wheezy, keeping it melodic, keeping the guitar, the flute, some ambience, keeping it interesting while also keeping it very simple, and making sure the frequencies are all filled out. Like I said, sound selection is huge, making sure you have quality sounds that, you know, fill out the frequencies where they should, and also going in and EQing out the frequencies that you don't need. Like as you saw on the flute, I EQ'd out a bunch, and little tweaks like that will make your sample sound a lot better. So yeah, hopefully you learned something, hopefully you got inspired in some way, and don't forget to subscribe. Like I said, I'll leave a link in the description for the sample pack with this sample and a bunch of samples like it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.